They tell you Rio de Janeiro's oil boom is Brazil's ticket to prosperity. Offshore platforms pumping billions of barrels from pre-salt fields. Petrobras operations generating massive revenue. Government officials celebrating record production and economic growth. But here's what they're not telling you. While oil companies extract wealth from Rio's coast, ordinary Brazilians are paying premium prices at the pump for their own oil. Fuel costs keep rising despite domestic production. The cost of living is spiraling upward, and the oil wealth that's supposed to benefit everyone is making inequality worse, not better. This isn't about a few unfortunate side effects. This is about an economic model that profits the industry while squeezing the population. And if you're wondering why a major oil-producing country can't provide affordable fuel to its own citizens, or how Rio's boom is making everyday life harder for most people, buckle up because the reality is far more complicated and troubling than anyone's admitting. Let's start with what Rio's oil economy actually looks like because the scale is genuinely impressive. Rio de Janeiro isn't just a tourist destination with beaches and carnival. It's the operational heart of Brazil's entire offshore oil industry. The Campos Basin, located off Rio's coast, has been producing oil since the 1970s and remains one of the most productive offshore regions in the world. Then came the pre-salt discoveries in the 2000s, massive reserves trapped beneath layers of rock and salt, thousands of meters below the ocean floor. These fields transformed Brazil into a major global oil player practically overnight. Petrobras, the state-controlled oil company, runs most operations from Rio. The company employs tens of thousands of workers in high-paying technical positions. Petroleum engineers, geologists, offshore platform operators, these are jobs paying multiples of Brazil's average salary. Cities like Macaé, a few hours north of Rio, exist almost entirely to service the offshore industry. Hotels filled with rotating crews, logistics companies moving equipment to platforms, helicopter services shuttling workers to rigs dozens of miles offshore. The entire regional economy pulses with oil money. When global oil prices rise, the logic says everyone benefits. Companies invest more in exploration and production. They drill new wells, build infrastructure, hire more workers. Economic activity accelerates across the Rio metro area. Restaurants fill with oil workers on leave. Real estate prices climb in oil-connected neighborhoods. Government coffers swell with royalty payments. It looks like the classic story of natural resource wealth driving regional prosperity. This is the narrative officials promote. Rio's offshore platforms as engines of economic growth. Production numbers as proof of success. Investment figures showing international confidence. The promise is simple and appealing. More oil production equals more wealth for the region and the country. That's the theory. Now, let's talk about how it actually works in practice, because the reality is far more complicated and considerably less beneficial for ordinary people. Here's where it gets absurd and completely counterintuitive. Brazil produces massive amounts of oil domestically. Rio's offshore platforms pump millions of barrels monthly. The country ranks among the world's top 15 oil producers. Yet Brazilians pay fuel prices that track international markets as if they were importing every drop from the Middle East. This makes zero sense until you understand the pricing mechanism Petrobras uses. The company sets domestic fuel prices based on global benchmarks, primarily Brent crude, plus dollar exchange rates and import parity. Import parity means Petrobras prices fuel as if it were being imported, even when it's extracted from Brazilian waters and refined in Brazilian facilities. When Brent crude rises 10%, Brazilian pump prices rise accordingly within weeks. When the dollar strengthens against the real, fuel gets more expensive regardless of production costs. Compare this to other major oil producers. Saudi Arabia, Russia, Venezuela, even Mexico historically subsidized domestic fuel. to insulate citizens from global price volatility. Their logic was straightforward. If we produce oil, our people should benefit through affordable energy. Brazil chose the opposite approach, market-based pricing that exposes the entire population to international commodity speculation. What this means in practice is genuinely infuriating. Oil extracted off Rio's coast gets priced for export markets, sold domestically at export rates, while Brazilians compete with global demand for their own resources. A family in Rio watching tankers load crude at local ports then pays premium prices at the gas station, as if that oil traveled from across the world. One Rio resident described spending 40% more on fuel compared to 3 years earlier despite reading news about record domestic production. The absurdity is complete. Brazil pumps more oil, Petrobras celebrates production milestones, and ordinary people pay more to fill their tanks. The wealth flows up to the industry and out to global markets while costs flow down to Brazilian households. Now, let's talk about the government revenue angle because this is where the math gets interesting and the problems become clear. Oil companies operating in Brazil pay royalties and special participation taxes to federal, state, and municipal governments. Rio State and coastal municipalities receive significant shares of this money. When oil prices are high and production is strong, these payments can reach billions of reais annually. Municipalities like Macaé have received more per capita oil revenue than many entire Brazilian states collect in total taxes. This money theoretically funds infrastructure improvements, schools, hospitals, public services that benefit everyone. During boom periods, you see ambitious projects launched, new roads, expanded ports, upgraded facilities. Politicians celebrate the oil wealth funding development. The narrative is compelling. Natural resources generating public benefit through transparent royalty distribution. But here's the catch that makes this revenue fundamentally unreliable. It's wildly volatile, rising and crashing with global oil prices that Brazilian authorities can't control. A municipality budgets based on royalties received when oil trades at $90 per barrel. 6 months later, oil drops to $60 and revenue collapses 40%. Budget planning becomes nearly impossible when your primary income source swings unpredictably based on OPEC decisions, Middle East conflicts, or global economic conditions. What happens in practice is entirely predictable. During booms, governments launch expensive projects and hire permanent staff based on temporary high revenue. When oil prices crash, projects get abandoned half-finished. Payrolls become unsustainable, services get cut. Mackay experienced this brutally during the 2014 to 2016 oil price collapse. The city went from flush with cash to fiscal crisis almost overnight. Construction sites sat abandoned. Public workers faced delayed salaries. The fundamental problem is building permanent obligations on temporary revenue. Compare this to Norway's approach, banking oil wealth in a sovereign fund for long-term stability. Brazil's model is spend it now, hope prices stay high, face crisis when they don't. Here's where the oil boom stops being an abstract economic concept and starts destroying family finances. Brazil's economy runs almost entirely on road transport. The country has minimal freight rail infrastructure, so trucks move everything. Food from farms to cities, manufactured goods to stores, materials to construction sites, all of it travels by diesel-powered trucks on highways. When diesel prices spike, everything transported becomes more expensive. The transmission mechanism is direct and brutal. Fuel costs represent major portions of logistics expenses. When diesel jumps 20%, transportation companies raise rates. Wholesalers pass those costs to retailers. Retailers mark up products to maintain margins. A fuel price increase ripples through the entire supply chain within weeks, showing up as higher prices for food, consumer goods, basically everything people buy. Rio already ranks among Brazil's most expensive cities for basic living costs. Add fuel-driven price increases on top of that baseline, and household budgets get crushed. A family spending 15% of income on food suddenly spends 20%. Transportation to work costs more. Delivery fees increase. Even public bus fares rise because operators face higher diesel costs. Lower and middle-income families feel this disproportionately because they spend larger portions of income on necessities like food and transport that are most affected by fuel prices. One Rio family described their reality. The father works in construction, not oil industry. When fuel prices jumped following Middle East tensions, their grocery costs increased noticeably within a month. Rice, beans, chicken, cooking oil, all more expensive. His commute by bus got pricier. They started choosing between filling the car's tank or filling the refrigerator fully. They're living in a city celebrating oil wealth, while that same oil boom makes their life measurably harder. The bitter irony is complete. Rio's offshore platforms generate billions in revenue. Oil industry workers earn premium salaries. Government collects massive royalties. And ordinary families struggle more with basic expenses because the fuel extracted from their coast is priced like a luxury import. Let's address the elephant in the room, who actually benefits from Rio's oil boom, because the answer reveals exactly why this wealth isn't reaching most people. Oil industry jobs are highly specialized and extremely well paid. A petroleum engineer at Petrobras can earn 10 to 15 times Brazil's median salary. Offshore platform operators, geologists, drilling specialists. These positions pay more monthly than many Brazilians earn annually. For the people holding these jobs, the oil boom is genuinely transformative wealth. But here's the problem. Most Rio residents don't work in the oil sector. The industry employs tens of thousands in a metropolitan area of over 12 million people. The vast majority work in services, retail, construction, education, healthcare, sectors completely disconnected from oil operations. These people experience only the downsides of the oil economy. Higher fuel costs, increased living expenses, elevated housing prices in certain areas, but none of the premium salaries cushioning the impact. The geographic manifestation of this inequality is stark. Neighborhoods like Barra da Tijuca, where oil executives and engineers live, show visible prosperity. Luxury car dealerships, high-end restaurants, expensive real estate. Meanwhile, favelas across the city face the same rising costs without any offsetting income gains. Two completely different economic realities exist simultaneously in the same city. The education and skills barrier makes this inequality structural rather than temporary. Oil industry technical positions require engineering degrees, specialized certifications, years of training that most people lack access to. It's not a sector where someone can transition from retail or construction without massive requalification investment. The boom creates opportunities for an already privileged class while leaving everyone else to absorb the costs. Statistics show income inequality in Rio widening during oil boom periods. The top earners pull further ahead, while median incomes stagnate or grow much slower than living costs. Oil industry professionals buy second homes and imported cars. Ordinary workers stretch budgets to cover rent and groceries. This is the fundamental disconnect. The industry prospers, certain individuals prosper, but the broader population struggles harder. Here's what makes Rio's oil dependency particularly dangerous. Local economies become structurally tied to oil activity in ways that create devastating vulnerability. Mackay demonstrates this perfectly. The city's economy revolves almost entirely around servicing offshore operations. Real estate prices inflated based on oil worker demand. Restaurants, hotels, retail businesses dependent on industry spending. When global oil prices crashed in 2014, the entire city collapsed economically. Construction projects abandoned mid-build. Shops closing in waves, unemployment spiking. The boom-bust cycle hit with brutal force. Rio faces similar structural risk on larger scale. As the industry hub, significant portions of the regional economy connect directly or indirectly to oil activity. This creates profound vulnerability to forces completely outside local control. When the next global oil price crash comes, and it will, Rio's economy takes massive hits regardless of actual production levels or domestic demand. But there's something even more troubling about how global forces control Rio's economy. Check out the next video to understand the full picture of what's really happening.